the story. The book was in fact very accurate. It feels like someone else getting the glory for a ghostwriter's work. To do this, again, I kind of give it a free pass just because of how much money it.
Hi friends, welcome back to my channel and to another monthly reading wrap-up. This month I wanted to try something new that was inspired by Plant-Based Bride, and that is to share my monthly reading wrap-up through my reading journal. Throughout the last year, I've seen many comments wanting more reading journal content, and I thought I'd show you all how I document the books I read in my journal and also talk about all of my readings for the books that I read this month. I keep a pretty simplistic setup for my journal. I always start off my entry with a space to add the book cover once I have it printed, and then I stamp out the book title and write out the author's name. For each book, I like to keep track of the format that I read it in, the length of the book, what year it was published in, the genre, and the dates that I read the book. Then I add my rating and my thoughts about said book. The first book that I read in September was such a hit, and that was The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I rated this 5 stars. This book is like a literary fiction and romance in one. The writing was extremely atmospheric, that it literally felt like I was there in every scene with the characters. I loved the characters, and I especially loved the messages on grief itself. And my favorite character was Iwan, or Ivan, however you say his name. He was such a gem of a man, and I loved seeing his and Clementine's relationship unravel. Next, I read Drowning Erin by Elizabeth O'Rourke, which is the companion novel with Waking Olivia that I read last month. I enjoyed this book better than Waking Olivia, and the story and the history between Erin and Brendan, it was cute. But that's really all that there was to it. There was a lot of miscommunication, more than I typically like, and some parts were a bit heavier in this novel, but overall I did enjoy it. It just wasn't a favorite from this author, and honestly pretty forgettable. So I gave it 3.5 stars. Next, I moved on to another romance, which was Twisted Games by Anna Huang. This is the second book in the Twisted series, and although it was better than the first book, it still wasn't that amazing. I don't know if it's just me, but I could not get hooked onto this series like other people that I've seen. It felt like the time jumps didn't allow room for you to connect to the characters, and although so many years go by in this book, it felt like the characters didn't change at all. I liked Reese and Bridget as a couple, but I still wasn't connected to them overall, so I gave this 3 stars. So continuing my romance binge, I picked up Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, as I've seen it circle around online, and this was definitely more of a historical fiction than romance, but I did enjoy it nonetheless. The letter writing, the magic, it was such a nice touch, and I absolutely adored Iris and Roman. I'm excited to see where the second book will take us and continue the world building, especially with the crazy cliffhanger at the end. I loved it. I gave this 5 stars. So you'll see here, I then add some colorful touches to the border and highlight some parts just to make the page pop out more. And then obviously the covers add a nice touch of color as well. The next 5 books are pretty much all romances, but the next book I read was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. And this was a shining 5-star read for me pretty quickly when I was reading it. I can confirm that all I need in a romance are small towns and cowboys. This was so good. It was a magnificent debut novel, by the way, and it had basically everything I needed to sit back, kick my feet, and giggle while reading. Luke Brooks can literally call me sugar any day, by the way. Unfortunately, the next book I read was a much different end result. I read The Devil Gets His Due, which is the 4th book in the Devil series by Elizabeth O'Rourke. And I'm finding that I'm liking each book less and less in this series. I found this book pretty forgettable, and the characters I felt like didn't really work that well together, and I didn't like the chemistry or really even see or feel the chemistry between them. There were some more sincere scenes, but overall it wasn't that great. And I ended up giving this book 2.5 stars. Probably would even do a 2-star. So to pick myself up after that book, I read Behind the Net by Stephanie Archer. And I was actually really enjoying this book and loved the premise and relationship between the two main characters that basically knew each other in high school, didn't talk, but liked each other, and then in adulthood they reconnected. But then I read the nickname Songbird one too many times and instantly got the ick. After that, having to read the horrible nickname literally every other paragraph was really bothering me, and I just couldn't enjoy it. Other than that, honestly, it was such a good book. I gave it 3 stars, but that nickname, I just couldn't get over it. Next, I read A Not So Meet Cute by Megan Quinn as a recommendation from one of my friends, and I don't know if it was because I had the 2 books previously that I didn't like, but this book annoyed me. I didn't like it at all. I didn't find it funny. The only thing I really liked and the redeeming factor was Huxley's brothers, so I am considering continuing the series. But I don't know. I think it's just a me problem. I ended up giving this 2.5 stars. I think a lot of people would like it. I just think there was a lot of things that at that moment made me not enjoy the book as much as I thought I would. Next, I recorded a video all around reading dark academia. So if you watch that video, you'll know all my feelings for the next 3 books, so I'll try and keep this short and sweet. But I started the video off reading Ace of Spades, which is a YA thriller that is very similar to Gossip Girl and Pretty Little Liars. The twists were definitely not the same, but it gave the same vibes. So overall, I did enjoy this book, even though the pacing was a bit slow for me, but the last third was so crazy and hectic and jam-packed with action. That's what really redeemed the book for me. And I did actually really enjoy the ending, so I gave this 3 stars. Next, I read Babel by R.F. Kuang, and oh my gosh, I went into length about my feelings about this book in the last reading vlog. I gave this book a 4 stars, and I'm honestly still thinking about it even though I finished this book over a week ago. You can tell so much time and effort was put into this book, and I really appreciated R.F. Kuang's writing and the topics that were covered in this book. I was so emotional by the end of this book, and honestly, my feelings really changed once I finished the book, as for most of the time that I was reading it, it felt like a 3-star read for me. It was a fantastic premise, amazing execution with some flaws there, but very unique, and I really liked it. So the last book that I read for my Dark Academia vlog was The Raven Boy. So this is also like a YA fantasy book that is tagged as Dark Academia, but I really wouldn't say it is Dark Academia unless it gets more scholarly as the series goes along, but this is just the first book. This book had me confused for a good chunk of it, but once I was able to put together some of the pieces, I found it very exciting, interesting, and very mysterious. I think I will continue the series, and so overall I gave this book 3 stars. Next, to cleanse my palette after all the Dark Academia books, I picked up One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid, as it's been on my TBR for quite a while. And sadly, this was quite the disappointment. The story itself was heartbreaking in a scenario that I'd never want to be in, but I think that there was a lot of telling and not showing in this book, and the decisions made by the main character Emma were done so quickly, even though the impact of her decisions were huge. So the message behind the story is very sweet. I just didn't like the execution. So I gave this, I think, 2.5 stars. And lastly, I finished this book/play on October 1st, but I'm counting it in my September reads. So I read King Lear by Mr. Shakespeare, and I basically wanted to read it to prep myself for going to watch the play the next day, and oh my gosh, it was fantastic. What a difference it is to read Shakespeare when you're in your 20s versus high school. I found my experience much different. I find you can perceive the plays so much better, and the experience is just so much better overall. I also listened to Ben McElvoy's podcast about King Lear after I read this and watched the play, and it really solidified and made me love this text even more. Shakespeare wordplay is delicious and genius, and this tragedy was so much more than just a tragedy. I really, really loved it. Highly recommend, and I gave this 5 stars. Here I'm just showing you all the little book images that I printed, and I just used double-sided tape to add them to my little spreads. And then lastly, I wanted to go over my stats page that I do at the end of every month, so I have a little snapshot of what the month looked like. I like to keep track of certain things such as how many books I read, the hours of the books I listened to, if I listened to any audiobooks, the genre breakdown, the amount of pages I read, if I DNF'd any books, and then the formats of the books that I read, as well as all of the books that I read and their star ratings. And then I also have a spread right beside it for Q3, as we just entered Q4 of the year, so you'll be able to see that as well. So let me know if you'd like to switch up for my monthly reading wrap up. Maybe I'll incorporate this setup every once in a while to keep you guys in the loop of my setups. But yeah, let me know how your reading month was in September down below. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Stay sweet, and I'll see you next time. Happy reading!